Hello, everyone. My name's Troy. Welcome to Midweek Conversations, where we have real conversations with real people. So just a reminder, every Wednesday night at 6:30 starts with Mighty Kids. If you missed that, you can go back and watch it later. Then it'll be Midweek Conversations, which will happen right now. And following immediately after this will be Youth Quake with Pastor Natasha. And that will be right around 8 o'clock. And so we're so glad you're here. This is something that we're going to be doing for a few weeks. Midweek Conversations will be taking place up until Christmas break. And if you have a question, we're going to be talking about personal finances, meaning budgeting, saving, all of those types of things. And when I have questions about finances, I have one person that I call professional, and I flew this person all the way in from St. Antoine. And we have a special guest today, and I would really encourage you to share this video so that as many people can tune in, many people can watch. And if you have a question, feel free to type it in the comments of the video. We'll be monitoring, and we would love to answer some questions near the end. So I have a guest with me, and here she is today. Her name's Ronnie Lee, and it's so great to have you here, Ronnie Lee. And so what I'd like you to do is just take a moment, introduce yourself, and tell us a bit about your family.
So like you said, my name is Ronnie Lee. I'm married to Chris. Chris is a firefighter for the city of Moncton. He works construction on the side, and we have 4 kids. Our oldest is 7, and our youngest is 2, so it's pretty busy.
Yes.
And I stay home and I homeschool the kids. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, that's enough, I think. So we're going to be talking about all things budgeting, all things personal finance. And so we're really excited about this conversation. We're going to do at least this week, and maybe later on we might do another week, because we know this is a huge need in our area. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have a conversation. I'm just going to ask Ronnie Lee some questions, and she's going to be able to answer them. And if you have questions, feel free. So my first question to you, Ronnie Lee, is this. And you'll have to bear with us because we're quite a distance away from each other because of restrictions, and the cameras are confusing. So if I'm looking at her and looking at the wrong camera, please forgive us. But when did your financial journey begin for you and your family? What started you on the journey to really get a hold of your financials?
So 2 years ago, I had a friend post on Facebook that she was a year away from paying off her mortgage. And she was my age, and I knew she was a stay-at-home mom, so it really caught my attention. But as soon as I read it, I started making excuses for myself as to why we weren't in the same position as they were.
Of course.
So I thought to myself, her husband must make a whole bunch of money. And so I kept reading her post, and turns out her husband was an electrician, just like Chris was before becoming a firefighter. So my next excuse was they must own a really cheap house, and it was really easy to pay off. And so I kept reading, and the house that they were about to pay off was a house that they had built 8 years ago. So I commented, "That's impressive, sign me up." And so she created a group a few weeks later, and when she created the group, it said, "Winning with Money Using Dave Ramsey."
Right.
And I thought, like I was really discouraged because to be honest, like I wanted a magical solution to all of our money problems, and I knew Dave Ramsey was all about paying debt and working hard. So I wasn't interested, but I went anyways, and she just shared about how they did it. Like, all we needed to know was that she had been through it before. Mm-hmm. She encouraged us, and just seeing someone else our age in our situation, and they were even way past us. They were paying off their mortgage. Yeah. If they were paying off their mortgage, we were able to pay off our debt, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think one common thing is people think, that more money will solve money problems.
More money will make you more of what you already are.
Yes.
So if you already are generous, if you already are responsible, it'll make you more of that.
Yep.
But if you're irresponsible, it's not going to make. That's truly what we believed. We were always waiting for the next raise.
Exactly.
That we just thought.
And we think if we could get more money,
yeah,
we can fix this problem.
Yeah.
But the really 99, probably even more, of people that struggle financially, it's not a money problem.
Yeah.
We can all do a better job with the money that we have and create the solution.
Yeah.
And so that's how your journey started.
Yeah, I'm so thankful for her. Like, she could have easily said, this is our finances, it's none of other people's business.
Right.
And yeah, just her sharing her story changed our lives, and like a dozen other people in that group too. Like, yeah.
And I think that it's like anything, when you hear about something that really does change your life, you want to be able to share that with other people.
Yeah, I think we have a responsibility. Like, if you've won in a certain area, I think it's your responsibility to share how you did it.
Yeah. So we're only going to be talking for like maybe around 25 or 30 minutes. So we might do another part to go in a little bit deeper later on. But one thing I want us to do is, David Ramsey does kind of lay out a plan, a simple plan, 7 steps. And so if we could just discuss what are those 7 steps, we'll say one and then we can talk about it, and then you'll say another one, just to kind of give people an idea of what they are so that they could even start today. Because everyone who will watch this, maybe not a lot of people might watch it right now, but lots will watch it tomorrow, the next day, the next day, the next day. In 2 years from now, someone will say, my financial future got changed because I fell on a 2-year-old video and I watched it. So baby steps. So what's baby step number 1?
The first baby step is to save $1,000, and that's considered like your baby emergency fund. The reason you don't start with your debt right away is because he found that when people started with their debts right away and then ran into a small emergency, they couldn't cover it, and they needed to go back into debt to cover the small emergency. It just played with their, I don't know how
It's hard on the head.
Hard on the head, yeah. Because winning with money is 20% head knowledge, but 80% behavior. So if you get discouraged, that's like 80% of your...
For sure.
Yeah.
So you need to save $1,000
Yeah.
in an emergency fund. So if there's an emergency that comes up, you know, and like a new TV is probably not an emergency, but like
Definitely
a real
not an
emergency
emergency.
comes up, then you will have the money to cover that. So if there was a leak, or if there was a plumbing emergency or a house emergency. And you know what? I've known that to be true. That you get that first $1,000 and it almost feels like the more prepared you are, the more those troubles stay away.
Kind of, and they changed the nature of it. So like as soon as we saved our $1,000, our washer broke down. We had to use about half of it to replace it. It, like, the emergency became an inconvenience. So you were only worrying about the washer versus worrying about money and washer. You know what I mean?
So it made it a lot easier. I can remember having, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, if a washer broke down, not only did the washer break down, but there was money, there was lack of sleep. How are we going to get a washer? You know what I mean? And there was all of this stress. So first step, really important, save $1,000. If you're watching this, start doing that today. You can sell something. You probably have something that you don't need, that you bought to impress people that you don't really like. So you should sell that and try to get $1,000 together. Next step.
Then you list your debts smallest to largest.
Okay.
And you start by paying off the smallest one. Some people ask, like, if you should be paying off the one with the highest interest or the highest payment or whatever. You start by paying off the smallest one because, like I said, 20% head knowledge, 80% behavior. If this was a math issue, we wouldn't be in debt, right?
If we were worried about interest rates, we wouldn't be in this problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you make all the minimum payments on all your debts except the smallest. Any extra you have goes on the smallest debt.
Right, so if you have a credit card with $1,000, a credit card with $5,000, and a line of credit with $15,000, you do minimum payments on them all, but you concentrate on the $1,000 credit card.
You attack the $1,000 credit card.
As much as you can.
Yeah, because what happens after that is you can take the minimum payment you were doing on your credit card and roll it over to your next debt.
Right. So if you were paying $50 on this one, you take that $50 and add it to what you were paying on the $5,000. And when you pay the $5,000, it's like a snowball, he calls it, right?
Yes, he calls it the debt snowball.
I'm trying to pass the Dave Ramsey test here with Ronnie Lee. So that's step number 2. What's step number 3?
Number 3 is a fully funded emergency fund. So you had your $1,000 to start, and now you have to beef that up. You save 3 to 6 months of your expenses. And so that depends. Like if you have a 2-salary household, you're probably good with 3 months. But if you only have one income earner in the family, or you're living off of commissions, or if you're a hairstylist, stuff like that, like money isn't always...
Especially in the times we're living in right now,
Exactly.
right? If you use hairstylist as an example,
Yeah.
you're open, then you're closed, then you're open and you're closed, and
Yeah.
that could be incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
And for everybody, whether you're working in a restaurant or retail or whatever, it can be so difficult.
Yeah.
So have an emergency fund. I think a fully funded emergency funds. I think this is a really hard step for people, because once you get out of debt, I think people breathe this sigh of relief, and they're like, okay, I'm out of debt, I've arrived. But I think the numbers of people that have gotten out of debt and gotten back into debt are a lot, because they stop short of really where they need to go.
Yeah. So the first 3 steps that we just talked about should be done with gazelle intensity. And we can talk about that later, but... Oh, actually, I've gotten written down here. The reason he calls it gazelle intensity is because in Proverbs 6, verse 3, God actually tells us what to do if we've signed on for debt.
Right.
And so it's something like, if you've signed surety, my son, allow no sleep to your eyes, and free yourself like a gazelle from the hand of a hunter, a bird from the snare of the fowler. So the first part talks about working hard.
Yep.
You need to work hard to get out of debt. And then you need to do it with gazelle intensity. So a gazelle needs to run away from a cheetah, I think.
Right.
And statistically, a cheetah runs much faster than the gazelle. But the gazelle's running for their life, right? So they end up getting away.
Yep.
And that's really what Chris and I wanted to do. Like, we wanted to get out and never go back. We wanted a different future for our kids, so we went gazelle intensity. So you keep that intensity for the first 3 steps, and you just do them one at a time.
One at a time. That's very important.
Yeah. So you save your $1,000, and you don't pay off any more debt before you've done that, and then
once you've done that, then you move to the first snowball.
Yeah.
And you do that, but you don't try to save 6 months.
No.
You just do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And that's important, because I think it can be overwhelming.
Overwhelming.
And just so everyone that's watching will know, they were gazelle intense. They were. And it's an amazing story. So what's the next step? We won't do them all just because they get deeper, and we'll talk about those later. But.
Yeah, we can do the next ones really fast, because you do them all at the same time. So when you're done that, you really slow down, and you can... if you want to go on vacation, you can save for a vacation. If you want a new couch, you can save for a new couch.
Right.
But you need to do that while saving for retirement, saving for kids' college, and then if you have any extra money, you can put it down on your house to pay it faster. Okay.
So those are all at the same time?
Yes. You relax.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So in the comments of this video, and we'll list the baby steps later.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you take a moment. You don't have to go into specifics about anything you don't feel comfortable with, but just specifics about your story, where you were, where you are now. You don't have to tell us, your income and how much debt you had, but just kind of your story of where you were.
So when we started this journey, Chris had just gotten a full-time job as a firefighter. So a few years before this, Chris decided to quit his job as an electrician and pursue a career in firefighting. But his first job as a firefighter was a casual position, and the work was not guaranteed, and he was still working his construction job to make up for that. So we were exhausted. And I remember meeting with you about our finances, and I really felt like we were living, I don't want to say poorly, we weren't at the poverty level, but our mentality, we had a poverty mentality.
Right.
Our mentality was to spend as little as possible, because we had never seen any progress with our money. Right? So it was just like we assumed we couldn't spend anything because we were irresponsible with it, really, and didn't know what we had to spend.
I remember sitting in your house with me, you, and Chris, all the numbers and just trying to figure it out. And the thing that struck me about it is that there wasn't like this gross, like this huge neglect. There wasn't like, oh yeah, we bought, we bought this and that. It was like, there was house stuff and this stuff, like normal
Yeah.
things, and you were paying everything. It's not like your things were in collections. It just slowly over time and having children and life and
Yeah.
and emergency after emergency,
Yeah.
it just creeps up on you.
Yeah. Well, we had normal debt. So we had a credit card,
Yep.
a line of credit, a student loan, and a car.
Right.
Okay, so that's all the debt we had. We had nothing extravagant, but it was using a quarter of our monthly income.
Yep.
So that was a big part
And
of
that's that's hard.
it. Yeah.
And even the line of credit wasn't like, oh, I bought a new TV, I bought a boat, I bought a whatever. It was all related to the house.
It was renovations,
Yep.
and to me, well, I didn't
Then-
like the idea of having a line of credit.
No.
But in my head, the house was still worth more than we were in debt to.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the line of credit just stayed there forever and ever. We never made any progress on it. And you talked about like saving an emergency fund.
Yep.
After you get out of debt. We had paid off our credit card. Like we paid off our credit card yearly.
Yep.
Every time we got our income tax, we'd pay it down.
Yep.
But we had no emergency fund, and so stuff would happen, and
Exactly.
we'd rack up the credit card again.
And I think that's something that we do,
Yeah,
right? We have this built-in savings plan of income tax.
yeah,
And so every year, no matter what, we kind of do that.
yeah,
And then we'd like, oh, I'll pay it off with my income tax.
yeah,
And we think that's good, except if we didn't accrue that debt, you'd get your income tax back and you'd
you could use it.
have your income tax.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it was always this constant. I've heard lots of people do it. I did that for years.
Yeah.
Oh, I can do this because I can pay this off with my income tax at the end of the
Yeah.
year. And that's just a bit of a trap
Yeah.
that we fall into.
Yeah.
And so, what else about your journey? So, how long did it take you to get out of debt when you attacked those debts?
It took us a year, and we had $46,000 in debt. So we worked 40. We worked 5 jobs between the two of us, and our budget was really tight. We had $25 in spending each a month, but that was easy for us because we have 4 kids and we had no life. But yeah, our budget was really tight, and we worked like crazy. Yeah.
So, just to reiterate, you said you had $46,000 in debt.
Yep.
And in a year, you paid it off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what most people won't know is when Chris went casual, he was making a certain amount of money, and then it went down to a certain degree, right? But you were able to pay off more debt.
So yeah, so when we met with you a year before we actually started paying off our debt, like I felt, like I said, like we had a poverty mentality. But a few weeks after meeting with you, I filed our income tax, and I looked at our yearly salary, and it was like good salary, a good income. And so yeah, when he accepted his full-time position in Moncton, the annual income was lower because we had stopped the construction job.
Right.
Because we thought now he's in a full-time position and we can finally relax. It was right when we were having all of our kids.
Yep.
So it would have been great to have him at home. But he literally, he got his full-time position. He stayed in construction for 6 months. Took me 6 months to get him to stop working because that's how Chris is. He's a really hard worker.
Yeah, he is.
And so he's finally home in January of 2019. And that's when Kelsey started her group. And that's when we started paying off our debt. So he literally just went right back to construction work.
Yeah. David Ramsey has a saying, and you can correct me if I don't get this right, but something about today you can live like no one else, so tomorrow you can live like no one else, right? So you have lots of friends that are doing lots of things, traveling, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And you're living like none of them. You're just being intense about getting out of debt, but you're doing that so later on you can live like no one else, because they're going to be paying off that debt.
Yeah. Like we have friends that built houses. Like I've been wanting to build for years and years and years. And when we were paying off our debt, like we had friends build houses and get nice cars. And he says that live like no one else so later you can live and give like no one else.
For sure.
Yeah.
So just let that sink in whenever you watch this. $46,000 in a year. Focused. Using just the baby steps. I mean, that's amazing. And you did that in a year.
Yeah. So we got a really generous income tax return.
Right.
We sold our camper. I'm trying to think of what else we sold. I'm not one for marketplace a lot, but no, we had
But you
5
did. You guys.
jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly for us it was because we have that advantage. Chris works 24 hours.
Right.
So he only works 2 24-hour shifts in the week.
Yep.
So no, we had grandparents babysitting all the time. Like we were hustling. Sometimes we'd just like see each other in and out the door. Like, but you have to take pride in that, and you have to take pride in where you are. We just bought last year. We bought a truck for Chris.
Right.
And the truck is just worth a few $1,000s. But he has so much pride in that truck because he paid cash for it. Yeah.
Exactly. Because he worked and you guys worked together and bought it cash.
Oh, yeah. He loves it. It's 20 years old, but he loves it.
That's awesome. Maybe 2 months ago or something, I was getting the itch to buy a new car.
Yes.
And one night I was going to do it. I was looking, I was shopping, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna call Ronnie Lee because I don't have Dave Ramsey's number. So me and Ronnie Lee chatted online, and I was like, and I had all these justifications because we all do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but I get this allowance for this and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, but, jobs aren't guaranteed. This was before COVID.
Yeah.
Right? She's like, jobs aren't guaranteed. Anything can happen. And if you base it on that, and she, chastised me for wanting a new vehicle now and still driving my old vehicle. But you know what? Even since then, there's things that I've been able to do that I wouldn't have been able to do.
The car payment, Dave Ramsey says, is like the payday lender of the middle class.
Yeah.
So we think it's totally fine to have a car payment. And I used to believe that I was always going to have a car payment and that everyone had a car payment, right? But now that I don't, I'm able to much easier save for my next vehicle.
Right.
I can save for repairs and maintenance if I need them. Like I said, Chris's truck is just a few $1,000s, worth a few $1,000s. But that's another thing. Before, we used to buy brand new vehicles thinking if I'm not paying payments, I'm going to be sending all my money to the garage because it's always going to be broken down. And this old truck that we bought, I looked at the last year because now we've had it for a year and we haven't even put $1,000 of repairs in it.
Right.
So compared, like under $1,000 versus new truck payments.
Yeah, $400, $500, $600, $700, whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't even compare. Like car payments really rob you of your wealth.
They really do.
Yeah.
And, there was a day where you could buy a brand new car, for less than $300 a month or whatever, but it's $500, $600. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So there's people that pay more for their car than they do for where they live.
Yeah.
And it's quite a thing.
Yeah.
So anyways, Ronnie Lee saved me from lots of financial strain, and so good. And so, but truth is though, and I really mean that, when I didn't buy it, there was things I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I did them, and I was able to pay for them. And I wouldn't have been able to do it if I had bought the vehicle.
Yeah. And if you finance, really all you have to do is sign a piece of paper, right?
Right.
If you're going in there with cash that you've saved up, you're going to make a much different, like your decision's going to be much different.
You know what? You're 100% right. It's so funny because now if my dryer breaks down or whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, it's more the annoyance of it now.
Yep, it's an
than
inconvenience.
It is. It's just an inconvenience, right?
Yeah.
It's like, not that you want to go put $500 out,
Yeah.
but I actually think a lot harder about spending my money now because I've saved it.
Yeah.
Right? Where I didn't think about it. It's like, well, I need a washer.
Yeah.
And you just charge it and I'll sort it out later. And kid, don't have a convulsion. But you know what I mean? But now it's like I've worked so hard to save this. And I don't have a lot of money, but I've worked so hard to save this that dropping 1,000 of it is painful because I know how long it's going to take me to save it again.
Exactly.
And so that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's good. Here's the truth. You've helped dozens of people get on the right foot when it comes to getting out of debt. For those that are listening today in our last 5 or so minutes, if you could give one piece of advice, let's just say, if you're not going to do anything else,
Yeah.
do this, what would you tell them?
It has to be the budget. You have to start there. And Dave Ramsey encourages you to use a zero-based budget. So how to do that is that you start with your income,
Okay.
and then you work your way down. I can add the form to the comments. You just need to give every dollar a job before the month begins. So it's a plan. You're planning ahead of time with your money. And some things can change, but the important thing is if you've given every dollar a job and something comes up, you're going to have to take dollars from another category to cover it. You know what I mean? Like you need to start living within your means, basically. Yep. So I would budget, and for some people, budgeting is scary. If you write down your budget and stuff doesn't work out, there's a few problems that could be happening. So you could have too much car, because like we said, like the average car payment is, I think it's $560 a month. So if you find yourself with too much car, you can figure that out by ask yourself if you can pay it off within 2 years.
Right.
If you can pay it off within 2 years, then, and if you want to pay it off within 2 years, then keep the car and do it. But yeah, a lot of people sit down and do their budget and realize, like, I'm just paying way too much for this car, and I'm never gonna get ahead.
And sometimes you just got to cut your losses at some point.
Sometimes you got to cut your losses, yeah. Like sometimes you're upside down in your vehicle, and he really encourages you to get a loan for the difference. Like, I know it doesn't make sense for us, but you're looking at a few $1,000s versus the whole car loan, which was...
Yeah, so upside down in your car would be if you had a car that's worth 10, but you owe 20 on.
Yeah, and it happens so
It happens all the
often.
time. I know a guy who ended up with like a Civic type caliber car that owed 70,000 on it.
Yeah.
Because he just kept rolling it into trucks. Then he's like, I can't afford this. And he got out into a Civic.
Yeah.
But the money's all been rolled in, right?
Yeah.
And so he was upside down. And there's, anyway, so that's another story. But you can get upside down in those things.
Yeah.
And you got to get out.
Yeah. So if it does make sense for you, you can sell the car and borrow for the difference. Borrow to buy this cheap, reliable car and get out of your car mess that way.
Yep.
Another mess you can be in is a house mess. So you might have too much house.
Yep.
If your house payment is more than a quarter of your take-home pay, then it's going to be really hard for you to get ahead financially.
So if your take-home pay for the month is $2,000,
Yeah.
everything in,
Yeah.
then your mortgage should be $500
Or less. Yeah.
or less.
Yeah.
Now, that's obviously a challenge.
I find it's even too much, to be honest,
Right.
because when you look at owning a house, you've got the insurance, you've got the power bill, like 25% I find is really steep.
Right.
If you find yourself in that position and you really like your house and you see raises in the future,
Yep.
you know you're going to be making more money in the future, don't sell your house because you're at like 23%.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you know, if your house is a problem, you know deep down that you can't afford your house, you know?
Yeah, I think what complicates things, and I agree with you 100,000%, what complicates things right now, even in our area, rent has become so expensive.
Yeah, but you don't have the repairs.
Yep.
And if you can get into a place where everything's included, then your rent is just the same thing every month.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the way to go. If you can do that, if you're get into an all-inclusive place, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And your mortgage shouldn't be more than for 15 years. So
Right.
if you can afford your mortgage, no problem, on 30 years, well, that's something to reconsider because eventually you should be changing it to 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been paying on my mortgage a lot longer than 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not fun.
No.
And another problem you can have if you write down your budget, you might be missing money. Like you might not have enough money to pay all of your expenses.
That was what I was going to ask.
Yeah. So that's an income problem. You just need to get more income. So you need to get a part-time job.
Right.
Or you need to get a better full-time job.
Right.
So doing this, like I sat down with a lady who was really happy in her job. She was perfectly satisfied. And when we did her budget, she was like, you know what? I bet I could get a better job.
Yep.
And so now she's applying for better jobs. Like she's found more worth in herself, and she's working too hard to be this broke, right?
Yeah. The thing is, it's really simple.
Yeah.
It's like an inflow and an outflow.
Yeah, and it can't
And-
be more than the other.
Right? So
Yeah.
whatever you have coming in for money, it can't be less than what's going out.
Yeah.
And if it is, you've got to fix that.
Yep.
There's got to be always more coming in. And here's the number one thing that I always tell people. Most people, you don't have to go out and get a second job. You don't have to sell all your belongings, etc. Most times. Sometimes you do, but most times you don't.
Yeah.
Here's the real issue. Most people, depending on your income, if you have an average income, everyone has a hole in their bucket, right? So for most of us, it's like a $5, $10 hole where you don't think anything of spending $5.
Yep.
You go to Tim Hortons, you go to Starbucks, you go somewhere that costs $10, you buy it, you don't think about it. You could be $50 hole if you make more money. And I think a lot of times if you can just plug those holes, I've talked to lots of people, they say, no, Troy, I don't spend money like that. I say, open up your app on your banking app and just read me, don't tell me where they were, but just read me the amounts of your last 20 transactions.
Yeah.
And every time it's $7, $9, $8, $4. And those few adjustments that you can make can create a snowball for the first debt.
Yep, for sure. That was our problem. Like, I
It-
would
it
write
al-
out a budget, but we would never stick to it. So if you're going to write out a budget and take out the money cash,
Yep.
then it's pretty impossible to overspend.
Right.
If you ran out of cash, you ran out of cash.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's probably discussion for another day, but that is so good. And so, one thing she said, make a budget. Be honest about your budget. And budget everything, because if you're going to spend $6, $7, $8, $9, you might as well budget it somewhere and
Yep.
know where it's going. Give your money a job. Make your money work for you. We're going to continue this conversation another time. Real conversations with real people. But it's really, really important conversation to have not only like this, but to also take some time this week, sit down with the people in your house, whether it's, it's the person you're in a relationship with, or even if you're a single parent, if it's your husband, wife, sit down and decide that you're not going to live like this anymore. Most people watching this today or tomorrow or the next day, you don't have to sell everything. You don't have to sell your house. You don't have to downsize your car. You just need to make a plan. We'll put a simple 7-step plan in the comments. Ronnie Lee will put a few resources in there. And we'll continue this conversation. Real conversations with real people. I want to thank you so much. And I really mean this. I joke and say, you know what, when I have money issues, I call Ronnie Lee. I'm joking, but it's actually true. I have so much respect for what you have done and Chris have done with and for your family, that the whole course of your family and other people in your family, because I know lots of people follow your steps, you're in your footsteps. You've changed the course of your family. Yep. And that, for me, I talk about money-wise, you've done that faith-wise, you've done that so many ways. And so for me, I honor you and Chris, because I know that 1 year was really hard.
Yeah.
And I know you guys still work really hard, and it's still challenging, but you've got a plan, and you've decided to make your money work for you instead of you work for your money.
Yeah. And I have to thank you, because every time we accomplished any little thing, I would let you know, because you were such an encourager during the whole process.
No, man, when one person wins, everybody wins.
Yeah. You were genuinely happy for us.
Oh, man. There's nothing better. And so that's amazing. So because of Ronnie Lee, I'm out of debt too, so she's changed my life. But thank you so much for watching. In just a few moments, just before 8 o'clock, Youth Quake is going to be live. And thank you so much for watching. Tune in next week, Real Conversations with Real People.